Well, no, that's
that's a fact. That's not even an opinion. It is lawful.
What do you think an opinion is?
Opinion is something that's subjective, up to your interpretation. So on the books, the law is that abortion is not murder. So if you say abortion is murder, you are factually incorrect.
So before we get back to abortion for a second, I think you were mistaken about the meaning of the word opinion, because you seem to be conflating an opinion with a preference. Do you understand the distinction between the two?
There is a distinction between the two, but that's not the connotation which I was using.
Well, you were saying an opinion is subjective, right? In the way that a preference is subjective. You know, I like vanilla more than chocolate. That would be a preference. That's not what an opinion is. An opinion is when you make a statement of fact from your perspective. So here's how I would show you an example.
That gets into the whole like alternative fact realm. You can make a proclamation about what you perceive the world around you to be, and that can be your opinion, but there's a specific distinction between opinion and a fact. Now you can say that like a preference and an opinion are similar in that they're both subjective. That doesn't mean that necessarily they are the same thing.
They're not both subjective, because a preference can't be wrong, whereas an opinion can be wrong. So for instance, I can say, I think that the moon is made of green cheese. It is my opinion that the moon is made of green cheese. That is my opinion, but it's wrong. I could also say that
some opinions can be correct and some opinions can be wrong because of the underlying data and the underlying evidence that is to
the reality to which they refer.
Yeah. So you can say that it is your opinion that the sun is shining, and that's also an opinion that is based off of the fact that the sun gives off light. But you could also say it's my opinion that that the moon is made out of cheese, but there's literally no evidence to back that up. So
exactly.
I think reducing it down to a preference versus an opinion is kind of trying to misconstrue the words there.
No, because I could have a preference. You know, I could say, I like cigars, which I do, and you don't like cigars. And that's my preference, and that's your preference. Neither of those is wrong. They're just our tastes, and de gustibus non disputandum est, as we say. But I could say a cigar is made of tobacco, and you could say a cigar is made of green cheese, and
but
I would be right and you would be wrong.
But that's not a statement of fact from your perspective. That's what you believe to be a fact, which is what an opinion is. So you can't say...
that is a statement of fact.
Yeah, so if I have a preference of what type of cigar, whatever, those two things cannot be wrong. But if you're saying an opinion is really a statement of fact from your perspective...
That's what you just said, too.
That's what you believe to be a fact. It's not a fact. So that's what I'm saying. If you get into this realm where it's like a fact is entirely dependent on what you perceive it is, that inherently means an opinion is a statement of what is a perceived fact from your perspective. But it's not a statement of fact from your... Because you see where the distinction is? You can't say that it's a statement of fact from your perspective. It's a declaration. You're saying, I think this, I think X, but in reality, the truth is actually Y. So if you're saying, it's a statement. Yeah, but if you're saying it's a statement of fact from my perspective, if I say, I think X, it's a fact that you think X, but that's as far as it can go. It's not really a fact from your perspective.
So we can't...
I feel like the reason why I'm making the distinction here is because it's kind of like putting my subjective opinion on the same level as because it's like, you can't say that I'm wrong because it's a fact from my perspective. That's kind of, maybe I'm reading into what you're saying wrong, but that's kind of the vibe I get. I get the alternative fact vibe where it's like...
I'm not sure what vibe that is.
That's the Trumpist vibe, the thing that I'm getting, where it's like you can see people in a crowd and be like, well, it's my opinion that I had the biggest inauguration size of all time, and that's just an alternative fact because it's from my perspective.
Well,
but in reality,
digital audience, he actually did, but that's a topic for another time.
Digital audience is crazy. So I don't think Obama was pulling too much on the live stream forums in 2008.
He probably wasn't. Yeah, so exactly. That's why such a statement would be true too. But I guess the reason it's important to clear this up is because of ectopic pregnancy.
Because the procedure is still in the board.
I think as you're kind of moving away from the homicide issue.
No, hold on.
Because I think the point.
Wait, how am I moving away from it when you cut me off and then I'm trying to explain to you why what you just said was wrong? What I'm saying is an ectopic pregnancy, you would still get rid of that pregnancy via abortion. The term abortion is just the termination of a pregnancy. A lot of times it does result in it's the termination of a non-viable pregnancy in particular.
Abortion refers to the termination of a non-viable pregnancy?
Yes.
What percentage of abortions do you think are in the case of ectopic pregnancy or a threat to the life of the mother?
That's a different question.
Because what I'm saying is
the reason why I brought up
far more than 99% of abortions are elective where the baby is viable.
Yeah, no.
So what you said is
what you don't understand is the concept of viability. 80% of abortions take place in the first week, not the first week, the first
Oh, you're saying
trimester.
viable of living outside of the mother's womb.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's why.
Got
So the vast majority of the time, and
But the baby would still be viable in as much as the baby would continue to develop and live, just like you.
That's
continue to
not.
grow
But
and
again, you're mincing words because that's not what the term viability means.
I'm just
you're
trying to get through the euphemisms.
You're saying that it's not euphemisms. It's literal words. I don't know what euphemism. Maybe I'm.
What do you
but
know
I'm
what a
saying,
euphemism means?
Yeah, I know what a euphemism means,
What
and I'm
is a
not using
euphemism?
one. But the thing is,
What is
I'm telling you,
a euphemism is a word to try to paper over a harsh reality with language that would be less evocative. Seem to be suggesting here is that the identity of the being inside the womb is contingent upon whether or not the mother wants to have an abortion. So if the mother does want to have an abortion, let me at least explain what I think you're saying, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying if the mother wants to have an abortion and get rid of the baby, then you wouldn't refer to it as a baby. You wouldn't ask, how's the baby doing, obviously. But if the mother wants to bring the baby to term and then raise the baby and send the baby off to college, then you would ask, how is the baby doing? Well, and the question of whether or not that baby is a baby depends upon the wishes of the mother as pertains to that baby. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no. So what I'm saying is the language that you use, right? So when we're using the term baby, there's no point in which you're growing up through childhood and you stop and think, let me consider the complex natures of pregnancy and the way the mother, you just kind of assume, you see someone showing, they're gonna have a baby, how's the baby doing? And most times it's not offensive because usually if you're getting to the point where you're showing, you're probably gonna already carry the baby to term. But when we're talking about the fact that the vast majority of abortions happen within the first trimester, a lot of times you're not even showing.
Majority now
you don't
are
ask,
medication or drugs.
yeah, but and at that point, you don't even really get the opportunity to ask, how's the baby doing? Because a lot of times you don't even know that somebody is pregnant, or they don't even know that they're pregnant, and then they get the thing. So it's like when you see somebody who is obviously pregnant at home, that's offspring. If I say I have a child at home, that's offspring. If I say I have a baby at home, that's offspring.
Yep.
They're all
Say
offspring,
you have a
and
fetus.
it's three, fetus, offspring.
You shouldn't kill any of them.
4 different stages of development.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, but
so,
of the
so
same,
they
of
all
the same thing.
Yeah, but they all mean offspring. If I use the term, same thing with fetus.
Yeah.
Same thing with everything.
And so it would be wrong.
I'm not saying, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
Well,
that using one word over the other means that it's not your offspring.
Right. So
still your
we
offspring.
grant it's 4 stages of the same person. So it'd be wrong to murder your teenager. It'd be wrong to murder your child. It'd be wrong to murder your newborn infant, and it would be wrong to murder the fetus. Which
because if you murdered them, then that's unlawful killing. You keep using that word. You can say kill because you believe that it should be
Do you
murder.
think there's a moral law that exists separate from the positive laws of any given state?
A moral law?
Yeah.
I believe morality exists. I don't believe that there's a moral creed that
What is morality?
That's a tough question for me. I think morality to me is, well, I don't know, like kind of what we feel. I don't necessarily, because I think it's a little bit deeper than feeling. Kind of like our nature or our feeling of what's right and wrong. I think the way in which we ground that, I like to ground my morality in human well-being.
Just basically have a truce not to kill each other. That wouldn't be then to say that it is wrong to kill someone, to commit murder.
Yeah, because
it would just say that we just kind of agree to not kill each other because it's.
Yeah, I think that.
So then this is crucial. You're not grasping at an ideal that you are intuiting using your reason. You're just kind of coming up with a concordat to live together.
No, but I think that before there's a time where we can sit across from each other and discuss what the meaning of right and wrong is, I think that there's a time where there's these feelings that we have through our evolution and everything where it's like, cool, I don't want to kill this person, not just because it's gonna cause some problems down the line, but it's like we can recognize what loss is, we can recognize we don't want that to happen to us, and it'd probably be better as our species if we work together to accomplish things more than we fight, and then that same ideal gets put into words when we get more words to describe that, and we're like, okay, this is wrong. We don't agree, and I don't think that it's subjective in the sense that, we could just decide what's right and wrong. I think it's objective, but that's only given that we all agree on the framework that we do all agree on, which is well-being.
But then it wouldn't be objective, it would be relative.
It's objective it's objective given like a scope. So I don't think that you can go out and find morals in the ground.
Oh, yes. Very much.
And I assume that you value that because you come at the position of, it's killing a person. We don't want to kill a person. That's a bad thing, right?
No, human well-being is much broader than just laws about murder.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that's one of the things where it's not, if you track it all the way back, it can be, at the end of the day, it is very not conducive to human well-being for us to kill each other. Or in your, view, the killing like the innocent child, or the language that you put on. So it's like
being murdered is not conducive to one's as well.
So I think that if we're talking about abortion, you can stop there and say, it's wrong to kill, therefore this is not.
It's not always wrong to kill.
Yeah. And I can take, and I can take that and I can say, it's not always wrong to kill.
Yeah.
And I think that
but it's always wrong to commit
and
murder.
I think that, which is why abortion is not
So it's
murder.
always wrong to take
But
innocent human life.
I don't think that that's, okay, we're going to get into what innocence is. But I think that when it comes to the case of abortion, when it comes to the case of abortion, I don't think that you saying that, oh, this is murder or this is killing or everything, or that's wrong. I don't think that it's necessarily a wrong take to have. But I can say that when it comes to human well-being and what we both agree on, human well-being is a positive that we should shoot for. I think the best way for us to achieve human well-being is allowing half of our population to have more bodily autonomy.
Right, but
statement of fact. That's not me saying I agree with the process, with the institution.
So why do you disagree?
Why do I disagree?
Why would you, if you were living in 1860 in some regions of the country, why would you say that slavery is wrong when it would also have been lawful by your understanding?
Well, again, you can say that murder is wrong, but if I said that working for somebody is slavery, that would also be a wrong statement. You can say slavery is wrong, but I can't say this one aspect of like working is slavery. So what I mean by that is, if I say that murder is wrong, that's a true statement, cool. But if I say abortion is murder, you're just trying to get it to, well, therefore abortion is wrong.
The reason
but you have to prove that abortion is murder.
The way you would make that,
it's not.
The way you would argue that is you would say that the baby in the womb that you're calling a fetus or embryo.
On top of that, I'm sorry.
But hold on,
we don't merely legislate on morality. So even if you think that abortion is immoral, that is different from what should be legal.
All laws derive from the moral law, but
that's capped.
but we'll get to that.
That's a nice one.
But this is really important. The argument that abortion is murder rests on whether or not the baby is a baby. So I'm saying the baby is a baby. You're saying the baby's not a baby. Well, but I guess this gets back to what we were talking about earlier, right? I can believe and I can think things and I can have opinions that are my perception of reality, and they can be more or less correct. But when it comes to religion, say, the question is, does God exist or does God not exist? And it seems to me there are many very good arguments for the existence of God.
It would seem to me that there are many very good arguments against the existence
I've never
of God.
seen a good one.
Well, that doesn't mean that there aren't any.
Well, I thought I've looked for them. I haven't found them.
I'm not sure how confident I am that you've looked for them. I've seen some of your
stuff.
stuff.
I was an atheist for 10 years.
I've seen some of your stuff reacting to certain people, how you like portray their argument off. And it's completely fine to voice or frame an argument in a particular way if it goes against something that you deeply hold. But the reason why I don't develop
I don't understand what you mean by that. You think it's fine for me to... You're saying that I've articulated a view that you find wrong, but you think it's fine for me to articulate a wrong view?
I'm saying that I think that it's like I won't say fine. I said I think that it's understandable, which I should say, that you would couch certain arguments. Yeah, but no, but that you'd couch certain arguments that like disagree with your religion in a negative light or whatever, because I don't think that you've genuinely, honestly gone and searched some good arguments for and against religion.
JJ, I was an atheist for 10 years. I was a pretty ardent atheist.
There are many things that are bad that aren't sin. If I'm walking next to somebody and they're in a wheelchair and there's a ramp, right? And I could go up the stairs that's right next to them, but I choose to run in front of them and go up the ramp. That's not a sin. I can look at someone who does that and be like, you're able-bodied, the stairs are right there. You didn't have to cut the person in line and go run up the ramp, and they obviously need the ramp to be used right now. You could have walked up the stairs. That's not sin. That's just a bad thing. If I lie,
it's sinful to injure a disabled person?
How is that injuring? I said walking up the stairs in front of them.
You cut them off.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
I don't mean cut them off as in like push them out the way. I'm just saying like if you guys are, you can just cut around them, go up the stairs, and you didn't need to go up the ramp.
But you're not inconveniencing them. You just said you're not injuring them at all.
Yeah. What do you mean by injury? Do you mean physical injury, or do you mean like tort law type injury where it's like any damages?
I just mean to harm them in any way,
Well, I wouldn't say
inconveniencing them for their meeting, or
I could say that it would be an inconvenience to them, and I could also like put my moral thing on it. Again, like legality, morality, that's a whole other thing. I don't think it should be illegal for people who are able-bodied to walk up the ramp, but I can say morally, that's not my most favorite action. You could have walked up the stairs just fine, but you chose to cut in front of this person who needs the ramp now to put yourself about this in the same way. It could be, oh, well, we are just like God. We can be co-eternal with God if we take the right steps.
No.
Or it could be, there's Christian science. No, it's not Christian scientists. It's I forgot what the religious denomination of Christianity is, but they do actually believe that. They have like is it Mormons? They have a father, mother God, and they believe that each of them can become like God, but they can never excel to the level of God. That's just their personal belief.
Well, what would it mean to, what would it mean? It's funny.
Well, the thing is, I don't know what that
You don't know the answer. So the answer is
because I don't believe it.
Okay, but you can know things about things that you don't.
So whatever properties what I think that being made in the image and likeness of God is whatever properties you attribute to that God, you guys share similar
It's
properties.
not a trick question. There actually
that's what my answer is. It's whatever.
There's a more specific answer, which is our intellect and our will, our reason. That is what it
That's
means
the answer
to be
that you believe is the case. Because you could very well believe you could very well believe in your God. And people who believe in a different God than you could believe that being made in the image of them is a completely different subset of categories and attributes that we attribute to ourselves. Again, you would need to demonstrate that yours is the one and only correct one first before you base your axiom off of all that, because you're just working off a big assumption. No matter how deeply you believe it, at the end of the day, it is one big assumption. And at least of becoming invisible, well, we can say, oh yeah, well, I think that that's the case, but if it continuously gets proven wrong and it never happens, then that's not a reasonable thing.
But you're
if you're gonna ask me how do we know that patterns are reasonable, well,
or how do you know? I mean, to use the example that you like coming back to, how do you know that you're not just living in a video game or something?
Again, I don't
that
think
would be an assumption. It's just a premise.
I don't know if I would. I don't know if I think that I wouldn't call it an assumption or I wouldn't call it a premise or anything because I don't genuinely think that you can know that.
But you live as though you're.
But I don't think that you. I don't think
you live as though things are significant.
I don't think that even if your brain was in a vat, I don't think that means that the things we're experiencing aren't significant. That's one of the things that gets back to God. I think if we are living even without a God, I don't think that means that everything is insignificant.
But you live as though your faculties of reason are dependable and that you're not being perpetually deceived.
Well, yeah, and when you talk about perpetually deceived,
yeah.
How do you determine you're not being perpetually deceived? I think you're lying if you don't realize that it's analyzing the things that are at your disposal and making predictions and analyzing.
Right, you have to take it. You have
but
to.
But if you're going to say because we 100% don't know for certain that everything around us is a figment of our imagination, therefore we're operating on faith, and that faith is the same faith as this God who apparently has told you everything you need to do and could never be wrong, despite the fact that everyone else believes in.
A philosophical deliberation, scientific inquiry, and all manner of inquiry. But they all have to begin with intuitive reasoning and with the assumption of premises. In the same way that mathematics has to begin with a set of assumptions: A plus B equals B plus A. You can't prove that, but those are those are some of the axioms.
You can prove that once you test it. If I say
you could argue Euclid about that.
Yeah, if I say 2 plus 2 equals 4, right? Again, we can say that the number system that we developed for it is like
but you would have to,
a figment of language. But the principle, if you have 2 objects and you add 2 more objects and you count.
But I'm saying even more axiomatically. You have to begin with 3 plus 2 equals 2 plus 3, for instance.
Yeah. So if we did that, then we could run experiments or tests to make sure this formula applies in every scenario. We shouldn't get 3 plus 2 equals 1 plus 7. We shouldn't get that at any given point if our things are working correctly.
Let me see if I can press this.
If we continue to get these same answers and we continue to not be proven wrong in these same things, you can know with a higher degree of certainty whether or not you're correct about that.
If you can know anything at all.
You could never know for sure that everything around you is a figment, but even if everything around you is a figment, you still know things within that figment. And it's not necessarily like the same leap of faith.
You just don't know it, but you could be deceived at any point.
But
you wouldn't necessarily rely on, say, continuity. But using my reason based on this premise.
Yeah, and if we're gonna begin with certain premises and everything, what would be more of being deceived? Us, in reality, all being brains and vats. But not only I'm comfortable with saying, I don't know that for certain, but here's these things I can work with. Whereas you say, well, no, we're not a brain in a vat. I know this story, and this story is the one true story, and everyone else's stories are wrong. While the whole time
ever told, you might call.
Yeah, greatest story you ever told. So it's like, which one it would be more of a level of deceit? You could say that it's just
real. The one that's true would be the one that's true would be the true. No, the one that's real and true would be the real and true one, and the one that's a deceit would be the deceit.
But even so, say the truth is that our brains are in a vat, and we can never necessarily obtain that truth, right? Because we don't really have a way of proving that we're not in a vat. I feel like my position of, okay, here's what we're working at. let's try to make these observations, see where it gets us. Okay, this is leading here. Okay, maybe we can predict this. Maybe we can predict that. I think using that method of reasoning is infinitely more likely to get you closer to the truth of the matter, that being we find something that determines, oh, it must be a simulation, as opposed to the belief system of, okay, well, I believe in this deity, and this is how this deity is telling me to act. And you trying to make those equivalents in leaps because we can't for sure know, that's
I think we're missing the point a little. So
have long hair, but whenever people think of a woman, they usually think of somebody with long hair. So if you want to subscribe to that role, a step people will take will be to grow out their hair or something. Doesn't mean that they need to do it, but that's just something that we kind of assume is womanly, despite the fact that there are many men with long hair. There are certain roles that you can pick and you can choose, and you're like,
I thought you said the roles don't matter and they're all just sort of socially assigned.
Just because they're socially assigned doesn't mean it doesn't matter. Race has no root in biology, but the impacts of race are still felt.
What do you mean race has no root in biology?
I mean that it has no root in biology. There's greater genealogical differences between members of a given race and members of completely different races.
But
Black people in the United States are the most diverse race when it comes to genealogical perspective, because we live in a society where race is based on ancestry. So if your great-great-grandpappy was Black, you technically could be classified as Black depending on how you present, despite the fact that I'm way darker than that person.
So you're Black and I'm at least vaguely white. A little Sicilian, but I would be identified as white. Mm-hmm. No one would be confused about that fact. Even if I took on all the cultural attributes stereotypically associated with Black people and you did that for white people,
see,
no one would be
confused.
confused.
That's the conflation thing, is that because two subjects are socially constructed does not mean that they're socially constructed in the same way.
Of course.
So there's not really like attributes that you could take on as a Black.
You didn't have conceptions of racial differences, but that's not true.
No.
And through the Middle Ages, it's true. You see it even the Muslims.
No, what I'm saying is they had conceptualization of racial differences, but the concept of race are completely different depending on society. So in Roman times, you could probably get away with being confused as being a Roman, because there were very specific things. They weren't even like very specific things, but if they considered you a barbarian, it was an outsider, somebody who isn't like us. You could slip into a given society and assimilate enough to where it's like people could confuse you as a Roman, but they'll never confuse you as Black and me as white, because in America, the categories we have drawn is skin color and certain phenotypical features, despite the fact that we have gender and we have a genetic diversity across genders. Yeah. I mean, across races.
The thing is, those categories have always existed.
That doesn't mean that they're biologically rooted. Because a group of people is born with blue eyes does not mean that the blue eyes is a thing that must be assigned value out of some biological reason. We assign value to it out of some.
Yeah, I'm not saying anything about value at all. I'm just saying that
that's how the racial category is.
But you're making an historical point that in antiquity through the Middle Ages, people did not conceive of race based on these biological or phenotypical characteristics.
I'm saying race is not biologically rooted. I didn't say that there were no racial differences, but I said like in Rome
hostilities and
but that does not. I said there were. But it varies depending on society.
But you were saying there was no distinction other than between Roman and barbarian.
Yeah, okay.
I'm saying that is
true. I can grant the point that there are probably other distinctions besides just Roman and barbarian. But I'm saying while there are racial differences throughout history, the racial categories that we draw are societally based. There is nothing inherent about Black people that make them more likely to have negative stereotypes. There's nothing inherent about white people that make them more likely to be a dominant group in society. There's nothing inherent about the skin color of various Asian people, even though that's not even consistent because we just classify them as Asian, that makes them have whatever values we assign to Asian people. Those are boxes that we drew. Perfect example is Irish people. Irish people in the early 1900s and late 1800s were not considered white. They were pushed into the same. That's not a disputable. That's not even disputable.
They were.
That's not even disputable, Michael.
They were discriminated against, and
they weren't considered white.
You would have a better argument if you pointed to the Southern Italians. For instance, the largest mass lynching in American history was against Italians in New Orleans. You might say that in certain parts of the South they were considered lumped in as Black rather than as white. Even that is kind of overstated.
That's not overstated. Based on
the second run.
I know he lost the white vote by not a big margin, by like a pretty substantial margin.
In the real election? Because he was a terrorist.
No, both times. White people weren't like swooned over by Obama, and then in 2012 they were like, "Oh, this guy's trash." They thought he was trash the entire time.
White people also tend to vote for Republicans.
Yeah,
they're much more likely to vote for Republicans than Democrats.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking even white Democrats. Like a lot of them, it wasn't. It's not like Obama. I'm pretty sure Obama won a majority of the white Democratic vote. But if you're talking about the entire nation as a whole,
I agree that white Democrats are racist. I agree. I certainly agree with that. But
we're gonna agree that everybody racist now.
Well,
I agree that some white Democrats are racist. I agree that the vast majority of white Republicans are racist, though.
Really?
Yeah.
What makes you say that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You think America's a racist country?
It's really hard to say no. And the reason why is because how racism has been baked into so many of our institutions. I think there's a difference between saying, I feel like when people say, is America a racist country? They're trying to add the moral pejorative that it's like, well, he thinks everyone is.
No, I'm just saying, all America's a racist country.
I think the way in which America has been founded and operated, yeah, I think so.
Today, it's a racist country.
Oh, yeah.
How many
vestiges.
How many black people have immigrated to the U.S. over the last 20 years?
I'm not sure.
About 3 million. 2 million from Africa and 1 million from the Caribbean.
Why would they come to America if America was so racist?
It's a great question.
That is sending them over for college. That makes up a lot of, especially a lot of work visas will go to Nigerians and Indians because they're working in tech industries and stuff. Yeah. So it's not like these people are, and because in general, maybe wherever they're coming from, the economic opportunity is probably better in comparison to their country. That doesn't mean that they did a holistic review of the race relations of the United States and determined this country isn't racist anymore. I'm gonna take my chance over there. Yeah, it's better than
they thought about it before they immigrated.
I don't think that it's a.
You don't think they thought, is it a good idea to move across the world to this evil racist country? Or you don't think that passed through their mind?
Because I think that a country can have done evil racist things in the past, and you. But
you're saying today it's still racist.
I think it's still racist. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, but I don't think that that's a determining factor in the. So you're saying that if I go there, there's an increase of likelihood that I'll face discrimination. Cool. But if I go there, I could also get a job that's going to make me way more money than over here, even if I'm
Sounds
poor.
Like you're not being discriminated against at all. And in fact, we know that it's you're much more likely to get a job today for a big company if you are identifying as a person of color rather than as a white person.
When?
Yeah.
So one of my favorite studies in sociology is when they'll do application studies, and they'll change up things like maybe they'll provide a picture or they'll do names, right? Mm-hmm. Since 1985, there has...
In case of affirmative action policies, it's actually both.
Well, actually, no. Well, de facto would be... So the way I like to think about it is when we look at public schools today, there's still a lot of de facto segregation left over from the Jim Crow era because there was no serious
And because students
effort.
self-segregate.
Yeah, well, because they were put in a condition in which they were already mostly segregated. So you can't,
even in mixed schools, I'm saying. There have been a lot of studies on this, and it's very odd because a lot of people don't like there to be self-segregation, but it happens.
Yeah, it'll happen because of different cultural backgrounds and everything, but that is compounded with the fact that there was never a real ability to fully desegregate public schools.
And federal busing with the National Guard.
What? Yeah, and they struck that down. And it's funny because Joe Biden, back at it again, he was opposed to the forced busing and everything, along with a lot of white America at the time. And in 2007, Chief Justice Roberts, they had the Supreme Court decision where they decided that attempts to desegregate public schools by assigning kids to schools based on racial background to try to create a more even mixture was unconstitutional. Right. So even when we were trying it, it gets struck down and it gets struck down. So you still have not a properly addressed situation, which is if you're spending all your life around people around the same skin color of you, then when you get in the area, even though there are more people of different skin in it, right? We're just gonna hire according to a proportion of the population, which again, you're gonna have
But no, I'm not suggesting that, though. I'm saying we
just
don't,
hire
we don't
at
have
all.
Racial quotas.
So not only by factors of sheer math are you gonna have way more white applicants, you are neglecting the fact that the reason why you have so few minority applicants isn't just because they're applying at a proportionate rate and you're just saying no because you're being discriminatory. They aren't even getting the tools to get there in the first place because of policy that affected them in the past.
What policy?
So when we talk
why
about,
are they at a disadvantage?
Why are they at a disadvantage? We can talk about black people in particular. We can talk about redlining and housing discrimination. We can talk about the after effects of slavery and debt peonage that no one talks about. I noticed that I never see you guys Daily Wire cover anything when it comes to the history of black people that accurately explains where we are at today, because the last chattel slave released in America was actually in 1942. And that's not like a crackpot theory. That's because right after segregation or right after slavery, the South didn't kind of just like give up and be like, oh, you got our slaves, our economy is just gonna go along now. They attempted to have a system in which they re-implemented it.
Oh, look,
So
there are over 9
do,
million slaves going around today, not in the United States.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. So
how does it not?
Because we're not talking. Do you have anything to compare that to number-wise?
Yeah. So even 5 years ago, the number was down to about 2,000 people a day, which at that time was an all-time high.
Is it 3 million a year? Really?
Over 3 million.
I'm genuinely concerned because I believe that it was around 1.
It's not. It's much higher than that.
But
we have 1 million legal immigrants who come in per year, which is also a shockingly high number, completely out of accord with any other country on earth and any other time in history. But we also have many more millions of illegal aliens crossing into the border per year.
Illegal,
you can look it up.
Is a nice term, but I'm saying
it's a
when it comes to
foreign national.
That doesn't mean that you have to use alien, kind of like.
Alien just means a foreign national.
Oh. I mean, in the term, if you're using like illegal alien and you want to try to, like, that's like I don't want to say like incorrect, because I know you guys get about like speech and like.
No, it's
I know
correct,
you guys get, but it's not like,
the
term alien is kind of like, I know you
What's wrong with the term alien?
I know you talked about.
I'm not calling them ET.
I know I know when you talked to Bronte, you mentioned how using the term fetus is like dehumanizing. I think using the literal word alien is also dehumanizing.
But alien doesn't refer to Martians.
Alien refers to those who are not like us, of a different.
No, it just means foreigner. They're foreign, so they're subject to foreign governments, and they're here illegally. So we say illegal alien.
Oh,
this is a more precise term. The Democrats stymied him on building the border wall, and stymied him on ICE deporting illegal aliens, and made a big hullabaloo about Donald Trump putting families in cages that were built by Barack Obama.
Barack Obama did not build those cages.
He did.
No, he didn't.
He did.
There's a completely separate process.
He did.
He literally didn't. That's literally just a lie. I mean, I think we can get away with lying when you couch it.
When were the cages built?
I'm not sure exactly what year they were built.
2014.
They were not built by Barack Obama.
He didn't physically build them.
No,
His
I'm not.
administration.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm saying that the whole concept of the cages being used to contain these migrants.
I'm telling you when they were built. You can't tell me when they were built. You're just insistent that I'm not right about it.
I'm saying when you say that the cages were built by Barack Obama, first of all, I have no evidence that his administration constructed the cages. And even if they did construct the cages, they were not used as cages for people. You do understand that, right? The whole reason why the Democrats made a big hullabaloo about containing people in cages is because a bunch of migrants were coming across the border, and then the Trump administration were shoving them in cages. There was no distinction between whether or not they were applying for asylum, which the UN said that we violated international law on that front. You can roll your eyes about international law, but the process, because the process.
They're economic.
How do you know that?
Because we have 60 years of data on migrants.
So you
and
have
they're vast majority economic migrants.
No, yeah, you can say asylum in a country. They go across that border, go to the nearest station, and they declare their thing for asylum, and then they get refuge while we await the process.
What do you think the cages are, though? It's not like literally a dog cage.
It literally looks like a dog cage, and they had foil blankets. You can Google pictures of it. You get sure they didn't throw them in. Sure they didn't throw them in a Rottweiler cage, but they threw them.
Yeah, but it was a
processing
center because there were millions of.
A processing center? What processing were they going through? They lost people's parents. They were sitting there. There were disease breaking out. There was foil blankets. There was really no element of process.
Just died under the Biden administration in the same issue. But of course, the media never made a big deal about it.
I'm saying, actually, if you've been paying attention, Biden has been having a lot of criticism about how his immigration policy, like I said, has not been that different.
I don't see the crying AOC photos like we saw under Trump. Furthermore,
do you think AOC is supposed to go to the border and take a separate picture under every president about?
No, I think it was a cynical ploy, and she wasn't even near the centers when she did it. She was outside of a fence and posing for a picture. But even beyond the processing of these people, there was a survey that came out from Fusion and Amnesty International, reported in the Huffington Post. So we're talking about liberal organizations. What percentage of illegal alien women and girls who cross that border illegally do you think are raped or sexually assaulted?
I'm not sure.
The number is between 60 and 80%, which gets to exactly what we were told.
The government's going to arrest you or prosecute you otherwise.
Okay, all right.
Because again, consenting to pregnancy doesn't mean you're consenting to staying pregnant.
So if it is your belief that heroin
has more value than your own child.
The right to shoot heroin would be more valuable than protecting.
And I know that
more conducive to flourishing.
Oh no, Michael, and I know that you know that.
But I think that's wrong.
I appreciate the couching though. Like I know that you know that that's not what I meant. But
I think deep down you know that's not true, but you've
down
had errors of reasoning that have
No, because again, I think that everything has limits. I think that your right to life ends if you're trying to aggress on another person and you're trying to kill them. And it's funny, I'm not going to go as far as to say that the development of a fetus is necessarily an aggressor on that, but you're violating somebody's structural integrity, their bodily autonomy, especially if they don't want it. At the end of the day, the process of pregnancy is going to be violating your bodily autonomy to a certain extent. If you're okay with that, then that's completely fine. You're okay with that. If you're not okay with that, you shouldn't be forced to continue with that. So I think that bodily autonomy can be limited in like shooting heroin, but I don't think it should be limited in that if at any given point someone is to have sex with you, then you have to continue with that. And I think that if we are going to say that, oh, well,
I like the way you phrase that. Someone is to have sex with you, not that you.
Yeah, because because even though like rape is rare, right? But like what? Why would they not be lying now? Because they don't really face any as much social persecution for lying.
So you're just saying I just don't want to believe that.
No,
this
I'm
chart
saying you have to. I'm saying humans are. What do you mean? What chart contradicts?
Well,
even
the
if
chart
I'm
of
saying
self-reported
the
happiness.
chart that you're even saying, even if I just made up everything I just said, the chart isn't even saying what you're saying it is, because you're saying because there are more rights and look less happy. That means that more rights equals less happy.
I can't help but look. I mean,
you're taking a leap that isn't.
I don't believe that
what you're bringing up.
I don't believe that what we call rights today really do constitute rights, like the right to abortion. But I can't help but notice that over the exact same time period of the rise of feminism, that women's happiness has diminished not only in line with the happiness of men, but also relative to men. They've become even less happy than men, who have also become less happy. And it would seem to me, look, I'm not saying it's firm. I think it would seem likely that there might be a correlation.
With the rise of the increase of black rights and black humanity, happiness has decreased.
I'm not sure that black people have more rights today.
You're not sure that black people have more? No. Well, then you agreed with me that America's racist, right?
No, I don't think that America's. I mean, I agree with you on some things. I don't agree with you that America's racist.
No, you just said that we don't have.
No, black people don't have anywhere near the right to life that they had before Roe v. Wade, which is why more black babies are murdered in the womb in New York City than born.
Oh boy, I got to teach you about some like racial issues.